Hi, so my name is Stephen Bellamy, and for my creative portion of my testimony, I made a video, so check it out.
Hey, my name is Steven, and I was asked to share what God has done in me this year in 516. And for me, He has given me identity. So, growing up in a house with all nine of my siblings, I'm sure you can imagine how crazy things could get sometimes. I wouldn't say I was the perfect child, but I did make parenting pretty easy. Even as a kid, I would describe myself as kind, someone who was and kind of still is quiet, shy, and reserved. I like to help others, serve in the background, and not burden others with my problems. But this year has been transformational for me. God has done so much for me, with me, and in me. God has flipped and redefined so much in my life. My kindness, generosity, my willingness to serve others, I found that I put my identity so much in these things. I looked to others to tell me who I should be. I allowed them to define what my relationship with Christ was supposed to look like. Most of my life, my identity has been in how I can bless others, so I can use their approval to reinforce my good, kind nature. I realized that I was trying to find acceptance in created things instead of the Creator. My kindness, generosity, and everything that I considered good traits about myself, I genuinely believed these traits were because of me and based on my personality. My whole life, I believed my goodness came from me. John 15:5 says, "Apart from Jesus, I can do nothing." This verse really stood out to me because I began to realize that no good can originate from a sinful man like myself. It was during the year when I received encouraging letters that I began to fully realize what being made in the image of God really meant. But not only that, I also began to believe my identity and character is found in Christ. He is the source of all goodness. The lies I believed about myself began to have less weight and less control in my life. I stopped letting sin define who I was. I stopped letting fear of being known keep me from the love of God. When I realized God already knew who I was, being honest with Him was easy. He was faithful to break down walls and heal insecurities. God has shown up in ways I never would have expected Him to this year. The good I see in people, I now realize is just His character shining through them. I believe God has personally selected each one of my new brothers and sisters who joined 516 with me because they each possess a quality of God that I needed to experience this year. They have taught me, blessed me, and loved me in ways only God knew I needed. This year, in the simplest and purest form, God saw fit to use seemingly unconnected events and people to bring community, self worth, and identity to His wandering Son. All right, so that was my creative portion of my testimony. And all the information in there was pretty straightforward. The only thing that you might not have picked up on was the characters and the transitions between them and kind of what they meant. So, individually, the characters don't have any specific meanings, but as a whole, they represent different masks, walls, and personalities that I would put on to hide myself, things that I would use to present an acceptable version of Steven. And then the transitions, they kind of split away, showing what was underneath. And then the final transition into the video of myself was kind of a wiping away and a removal of all the masks. Um, so as I mentioned in the video, God began to shape my identity this year. As a kid, I remember not wanting to cause trouble for my mom or being a burden for anyone. I followed the rules of the house as much as I could. I tried to do well in school. I tried to give others a reason not to worry about me. I stayed in the background, I helped others when I could, and I tried to be nice to those around me. As I got older, my identity and character was shaped around serving others and being there for someone who needed a friend. I lived for being the blessing I thought a person needed. Along the way, I realized that being the nice kid made people like me, and doing good for others and having them notice me began the belief that I was the source of goodness. As I grew up, I began to have questions about myself and who I was.
I looked to others to define who I should be, but because I was shy, I never asked a direct question, not even from my family. So instead, I watched their behaviors and then tried to mold myself into something that would be accepted. I would much rather blend in than be myself because I didn't know who I was. I've always hated the question, "Who are you?" or "Tell me about yourself," especially in professional settings, because I never knew how to answer those questions. I usually just pause for a bit and think, and then end up saying random facts about myself. My name is Stephen Bellamy. I have 6 sisters, 3 brothers, 3 nieces, 2 nephews. I like to draw, and I like pizza. And that was the extent that I knew myself. But God has and continues to grow me in this area. The main reason for doing Project 516 was that I realized that my walk with God was not where I thought it should be or where I wanted it to be. So I knew I had to do something that would get me out of my comfort zone, something that would cause me to pursue Him. So I low-key went into the year expecting to encounter God in crazy, miraculous ways. I expected Him to come, break chains, and do crazy things in me. But looking back over the year, while I did encounter Him and He did break chains, I saw Him move in the mundane. I saw Him in conflicts. I saw Him in community. I saw Him when I would lay down and look up at the sky. When I had questions, He was there. When I was honest with my emotions and frustrations towards Him, He was there. God proved that He's faithful and capable to know and love me despite me not knowing what I need from Him. He knows what I need before I even ask Him. God is bringing me security in my identity. I mentioned in my video that I received encouraging letters and affirmations throughout the year. And it was here that I began to believe and see that my character was tied to God and not myself. In one of the affirmations I received, someone compared my loyalty and willingness to serve others as aspects of God's character. And that was proof enough for me that I was not the source of goodness for anyone. When my community spoke over me that they saw that God had given me the heart of a shepherd, that really began to change the way I saw myself. What I saw as weakness and a dependency for others, God saw purpose and reason. The more I get to know God, the more I get to know my truest self, the one that doesn't wear a mask, the one He sees and calls by name. Thank you.